we decided to make a movie. That's what became Thrive One. And yes, it turned out we have over 91 million documented views. It's in 27 languages. It opened up a world of possibility that became Thrive Two. And so it's been very successful, and I'm really pleased with that. It also garnered a lot of heat. And I personally became a very controversial person. I had people leave the room if I walked in, or be mean to me, or misrepresent me, or slander me, or all this kind of stuff. And so here I am now. I'm sure from the outside, it's like, oh, I'm just this controversial, fearless, outspoken person. In fact, I'm just somebody who went from believing in something to taking a stand.
That was Kimberly Carter Gamble, producer, director, and co-writer of Thrive, What on Earth Will It Take? And Thrive 2, This is What It Takes. And this is episode 19. Welcome to the Brave Woman Podcast. I'm your host, Tanya Lynn, founder of Sistership Circle and author of Open Your Heart and The Art of Leading Circle. I'm the mother of 2 girls, an 8 on the Enneagram, aka the Challenger, happily married to my business partner, Brent, love connecting with nature, and have put in well over 10,000 hours circling with other women. On this podcast, we will explore how to embody the brave woman so that you can take action on your dreams and desires, unapologetically speak your truth, and live life on your own terms. Grab a seat and a cup of tea, and let's get started. Oh, I am so excited for our guest today, Kimberly Gamble, who she is the producers of the incredible documentaries Thrive 1 and 2. And so I was actually watching Thrive 2 last fall, and with a sister who knows Kimberly, and we are just so into the movie. And I was like, oh my God, how amazing would it be to bring this incredible woman onto the show, because it's just such an example of being brave and putting incredible content out there, but it's controversial, it's new, it's edgy. So I just love for you to share the journey, because I think that's really, it's like we could go and watch the documentary, right? But it's like the journey of creating this and the inquiry, what you called it was the fearless inquiry that you've been in.
Yeah.
So I'd love to start there.
Thank you. It's wonderful. I love what you're doing. I think that there's so much that can come from women sitting together in circle and exploring these authentic processes that we're in to lead us wherever we go. And yeah, like you said, I had an opportunity to produce, direct, co-write, all co-host these films that ended up having a vast reach around the world. And I'm really grateful for that. And of course, the journey that brought me here started a long time ago. And I was reflecting actually this morning on the notion of brave, as you describe it here on your show. I identify as a brave woman, for sure. Every morning when I get up, my husband says, watch out, devil, she's up. I feel like, all right, here I go. So I definitely am comfortable with that. And I feel like I kind of backed into it, actually. And so I was thinking, well, what was that process? And it was actually a long time ago, decades ago, I was made aware of the fact that there were homeless teens in my community. They were kind of hidden from sight more than today, but a friend of mine who was a social worker on the streets sort of took me on a tour and showed me these kids. And it turned out that there wasn't a legal place for them to sleep in my community. Unacceptable. Of course, anybody would want there to be a place for children, teenagers, to have a safe place to sleep for whatever reason that they're there. I'm naturally kind of a competent, make it happen producer. And I turned my attention to, well, how would we do that? I just thought for sure everyone would want it. Anyway, long story short, in the course of creating what became a very successful program for homeless teens that spread all over the country, in the course of that, putting it together, I encountered a lot of resistance and like mean kind of and a lot of legal hearings and land use stuff and not in my backyard. And one day I was out at the facility that we had purchased to create this center, and somebody slashed my tires. And then when I got home, there was a threatening message on my voicemail. And I thought, wow, this is taking a whole new level. And I thought, I believed in this. I believed in it. I was actually watering my garden, and I thought, just give me a sign. I just need a sign that this is the right thing to do, because I'd never encountered that kind of like resistance and people really coming at me. And so I decided I would walk along the jetty and the path where I knew that the homeless folks were hanging out a lot, and just see if I had some kind of a sign that this was the right thing to do and not just my will. Or anyway, I walked for like nearly a mile and nothing happened. I was walking along, it's night, and I thought, oh, well, I'm just going to go home. So I was standing by this town clock trying to decide which route to take home, when all of a sudden, these three kids came up behind me and said, excuse me, ma'am, do you know where there's a shelter in town? And it was like my whole body just lit up. I realized this would happen and that I would carry it through to happening. And I said, I don't, but I'll take you out to dinner and you tell me everything that you would want in a place. And they actually helped design the program that night over a long dinner together. But the point of it here in terms of bravery is that I realized what happened is I went from believing in something that of course every community should have a safe place for people to sleep, to standing for it. And that 2 degrees of difference was the difference for me to really sort of own my bravery as you're describing it. And I say 2 degrees because it's only the difference between like 49% and 51%, right? 51% and you take action. It doesn't mean your heart's not fluttering or that you don't have doubtful thoughts or any of that. It's just which voice do you listen to and how do you move forward from there? So I think my relationship to bravery really began then in a way that I was like, all right, I'll do this, and became more comfortable, not never totally comfortable, but comfortable enough to do it. So in terms of how that led to Thrive 1 and Thrive 2 is, so I just kind of got more comfortable in my skin with doing it. And in the course of actually developing this big homeless teen thing, God, I kept winning all these awards in Washington for providing the most effective this, that, and the other thing. And I would go back there and give speeches and workshops, basically. I think it was the Congress Special Needs Housing or something. And every year they would listen, give me an award, and every year their policies would stay the same. And I thought, I'm not going anymore. There's something about this that's really corrupt. And so I remember on my birthday cake one year, I blew out the candles, and my wish was that I wanted to learn about money. I felt like there was some financial incentive to keep things the way they were, because there were so many solutions that I could see, that I experienced. I thought, why? And so many good people, why aren't these happening? So I thought, all right, I'm going to learn about the money. I had been a journalist for Newsweek International. I'd been trained as a journalist, and that's always follow the money. So I thought, I need to understand it better. And so I kind of ventured into what I mentioned, I think of as fearless inquiry. I just wanted to know, who makes the money? How does it work? What's going on that has so much power and control in so few hands when nobody I know wants it that way? So that began a very long journey of research that I undertook with my husband, Foster, who he came at it kind of from science and technology and new energy. And I came at it more from probably the follow the money and see what's happening on that end. And we kept comparing notes and found like, wow, there's all these fabulous things that could be happening now from new sources of energy, fantastic ways to prevent and heal illnesses, and great expanding consciousness tools and insights, and new ways to get electricity and care for the planet, and so many great things. And whoa, a really serious kind of control matrix for keeping that from happening. So it hadn't occurred to me that people wouldn't want to know that. I kind of came into it again, just kind of like, sure, everybody wants a place for homeless kids to sleep. Of course, everybody wants to know what's really going on in the world with money and this consolidation of power. We decided to make a movie. That's what became Thrive One. And yes, it turned out we have over 91 million documented views. It's in 27 languages. It opened up a world of possibility that became Thrive Two. And so it's been very successful, and I'm really pleased with that. It also garnered a lot of heat. And I personally became a very controversial person. I had people leave the room if I walked in, or be mean to me, or misrepresent me, or slander me, or all this kind of stuff. And so here I am now. I'm sure from the outside, it's like, oh, I'm just this controversial, fearless, outspoken person. And in fact, I'm just somebody who went from believing in something to taking a stand. And I am for people, and I'm for the planet, and I'm for the life force. And I believe we have what it takes to actually thrive. And I am going to do everything that I can to help make that so. And if that bothers some people, so be it. I feel liberated from putting my attention on that.
Wow. And just that distinction of taking a stand for something, and the conviction, and that North Star, and that really strong why. We talk about this all the time in Sistership Circle, is you have to be inspired by that why, right? But that taking a stand. And that's the biggest fear that women have around using their voice, being visible, is that resistance, that slander, that being ostracized, or all these things that you've experienced. And so, yeah, like, what did that bring stuff up for you? Right now, you're like, okay, I'm sure this has been vulnerable, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And it continues to be. I mean, I feel like anything, there's this spiral where we circle back to it with greater insight. I think what happened in that, as far as just kind of getting more used to it, or taking the stand, first of all, I'll say that I think everything emerges from purpose. Like, taking a stand for what is, well, what's my purpose, and who am I to even know what a stand is? What do I care about enough to say I believe in it quietly, or wait a minute, I'm going to speak up if that's being threatened? Like, that requires a relationship to self. So I think that leadership or bravery or any of that comes first from a relationship with self. And ideally that includes something bigger, the part of us that's connected, which is, I believe we're all connected all the time. But I think that, yeah, so for me, it happened, so Thrive came out, and we were in New Mexico, actually having this phenomenal time. We were giving a big talk in a big auditorium somewhere, but on the way there, we had a chance to visit somebody who had a new energy technology, two people actually, who had phenomenal new energy technologies that are very threatening to an oil economy. It's just my experience that when people have billions of dollars to protect, they'll do a lot to do that. And so even if there's a safer, better way to have electricity for people, especially one that could change a whole paradigm by showing that we're part of an alive, interconnected universe, and that the energy can actually flow when you get in sync with it, which is something we can talk about because of the spiritual lessons I got from all this. But in this instance, anyway, it's a long story, but somebody wrote an article that came out on the front page of the New Mexico, whatever Times, on the day of our talk, just full of lies and slander, and saying that what we were saying couldn't be true and all of this. So that, of course, what would happen is in the talk, a lot of it would have to be spent addressing that, and it was full of lies. And so we stopped to go out to eat, Foster and I was thinking about it, and I was I was tense. I had that feeling like, oh, it hurt my feelings. It challenged me. I was scared. I felt vulnerable. I didn't know if I was up for it. I'm not like a confrontational person by nature. So it was just like, oh, we were there getting ready to order, and it just like this wave washed over me. And I started cracking up, and I just had this complete laugh attack. Foster ended up laughing too, so hard just because I was laughing. We couldn't even order. The waitress would come up and we're just like cracking up. And I just got liberated. I just had this wave of liberation where I realized I cannot spend my time caring about what people who I don't respect think of me. That's the difference. I think the reason women have a hard time with this is because community is essential to survival, and we know that. It's in us. We know it and we feel it. So speaking up threatens our place in the community, and that's a dangerous, risky place to be. So I don't think this is insignificant. I think it takes training and a combination of fortitude and perseverance and grace and all kinds of things to choose which voice to listen to. So I have the voice that's like, ooh, and all that stuff. I'm just not listening. I'm not giving it any credence. And I'm choosing instead to listen to the voice that says, who do I respect? Who do I want to be in relation to that community? And probably even more, I think a lot from the end of my life backwards. I picture myself a lot on my deathbed thinking, did I fully live? Because I think I would really regret it if I ended up at the end of my life and realized I didn't live because I was afraid of what other people would think, or if they would include me in something I didn't actually even really. So I compare. Sometimes when I'm feeling afraid or whatever, I'll think, well, that regret would be bigger than this discomfort, so I'm going to go for the discomfort. So I can kind of choose and navigate that way.
Wow. So inspiring. And I'd love for you to share some of these other spiritual lessons that you just mentioned.
So I definitely relate primarily as a spiritual being. And so that informs everything, of course. To me, I can't imagine being courageous without that, because if I thought this is all there is and it's up to me and then it's done at the end, that would, I don't know what I would do. But from that orientation, one of the things that's been really interesting is that in my inquiry, following the money and all of that, I found there's like a matrix of control that we describe that plays out in every sector that helps funnel people into particular worldviews and beliefs. And one of the primary ones and science has a lot to do with what a civilization believes is real and possible. So if the scientific paradigm says we're in a finite, dead universe that's running out of everything, then notions of competition, and if you have it, I don't, and it's all limited, and it's okay to plunder the planet because this is necessary part of civilization, or all that comes essentially from a scientific worldview. And we started hearing from people saying, oh, we've got this kind of a technology. And it turns out that the technologies that they were demonstrating were based on an understanding, a common understanding all over the world. I was in everywhere, Russia, China, Thailand, Africa, Mexico, Costa Rica, you name it. Like, we traveled to see on every continent, there were people working with this same basic understanding that we're in this absolutely alive, glorious, interconnected, organized web of energy. And that it's possible to understand the nature of it and the organization of it, structure and flow enough to create frequencies that tap into it like a straw, basically, and get its energy. And this is true whether it's shaman with the sound or the medicine or whatever it is that they're working with to touch into it, or healing technologies where I was able to personally witness real time, complete healing of massive tumors disappearing in people under my hands, like remarkable stuff. And new energy technologies where I watched batteries run and run and run and then have more energy in them because they were tapping into something. So they'd all described finding that they were resistanceless. That was a word that many of them used to describe that they eliminated resistance. And in fact, the light that came through was white light. It didn't have friction, so it wasn't yellow and there was no heat. And they talked about it in terms of finding stillness, and that it was actually stillness was this state of complete balanced flow of energy. And Foster and I divvied out some of our trips, and I was in Costa Rica with some shaman and he was in Africa, and we went all around and we would talk. And I said, in this movie, we could cut together one sentence and it could start with the shaman and end with the energy inventors, because they're all saying exactly the same thing. And so I found that the same way we're all connected, these insights and technologies and the scientific paradigm, it's science and spirit are telling the same story. And that gave me a kind of a, probably just a knowing, that makes it so that it's easier now. I mean, partly I'm older. I love being older. It's just so much easier to have all this experience and kind of just be at a different stage. But I could say last night we watched a good documentary on Netflix it was about near-death experience. It's something that's trending right now on Netflix. So I love that kind of stuff. So we turned it on. There was one woman who described an experience where she was underwater for 30 minutes, absolutely dead, brain dead, came back, no brain damage, and something had happened where when she was on the other side, she was shown that her older son was going to die before he was a man. So she was a doctor. She came back like, how could that possibly be? How could she have survived? How could she have heard from whom what about something in the future, right? She had nowhere to put that, but she experienced it, and there was a sense of knowing in it for her. And lo and behold, it's true that her son years later did have an accident and die. And she said, when she told the story, she said, it doesn't prevent me from my grief as a mother. It just puts everything in a different context. And there's a kind of a peace that runs through it all. And I feel like that's something that my life experience has given me. Like, I have had so many people tell me that the things I've experienced couldn't be. I experienced them. It's okay if you can't conceive of that. I'm okay with that. It doesn't prevent me from feeling sad that we can't get there together. It doesn't prevent me from all the humanness of it. But there is a through line of equanimity that comes from knowing what I know within a context that's so much bigger than me. And I think that's something that, I don't know, I'm sure everybody can come to, but women in particular, there's just kind of something, a certain kind of strength that women can find. And when we do, it's the most formidable force on the planet.
Yes, absolutely. And I believe that it's in circle, when we're coming together, that we can really activate that.
Yeah.
And so you've had experience with women's circles, and
I have had more with just circles. I spent a lot of time doing plant medicine circles, which were super, super valuable for me in my emotional and spiritual journey. And also some with breathwork circles. I have two friends in particular who gather, and I've participated some in that. For me, my favorite thing is to be with women who recognize their purpose and live it. I feel sometimes impatient when women don't claim who they are, because I feel so sad that they succumb to the lie it's like, we are that, you are that, like, here we are, wake up, we got it, and we need you. We need everybody. So I want that to happen. And so the circles, it seems to me, are so helpful because they bring that out, and it gives me hope, because then I get to experience other women in that, and we definitely need each other.
Can we talk a little bit about plant medicine?
Sure.
Yeah, because I think it's such an important piece of us finding that connection with the earth and the oneness. And so is there a particular story or experience that you had that was just totally mind-blowing? And yeah,
of course. Well, first of all, I just so grateful to the medicine and to the people who have made that available for us. I had a chance to have, so my very special relationship with Mitra Polivi, who is a shaman in Costa Rica and who has a fabulous book, in fact, called Insights. I have it here, I'll see what the rest of the title is. But anyway, he's a fabulous guy. So I had a lot of journeys, and they were very intentional. I'm a big believer in intention. I think that that what we're picturing really matters, and that there's always a lot of energy flowing. And I think of it kind of like having all the birds fly in the same direction with intention. So I can think of one. I had a pretty rough relationship with my mom growing up. We didn't bond particularly. We got far enough along that it was fine. It was fine. I stopped being rebellious, and I was nice to her and all of that. But she developed Alzheimer's. And I thought, ooh, I'm going to need to spend more time caring for my mom. I'm going to have to do one next level of work on this in order to be more of service to her than just kind of have it be okay. I had a journey where I asked to see myself before I was my mother's daughter. Like, who was I before that? So that I could not have to struggle with who she was or wasn't to me. Could I just know myself in relation to my purpose apart from that, and then develop the relationship from there? So anyway, I had that intention. This was ayahuasca that I was working with. I drank the medicine, and I was just catapulted out into the heavens, where I was seeing myself prepare for this life. And it was kind of like a kid's video game or something, where it's like, all right, you can have shooting something from this hand, and you'll have this to be able to rely on, and this hardship and this opportunity. And I was selecting, like, could I accept this mission, right? And one of the things that I was going to have was this obstacle. So my job was to say, yes, I accept this mission, and I will find my way home as in back in heaven. Even with this, if I get these strengths and these opportunities and these obstacles, okay, I'll make it. So I watched myself take that mission, and I saw my mother as giving herself to be a part of that evolution for me to find my way home. And it was the first time that I ever felt grateful for my mom. I think instead of forgiving her or something like that, I saw the role that she played. And there I was home having this vision. So it had worked. She had given me what I needed to find my way home. And I was so profoundly changed. And the way I used to go was I was in Costa Rica and I would fly to LA where my mom was, see her, and then fly home to Northern California where I live. So I stopped after that journey to see my mom, and nothing changed in my physical or conversational, but I was saying everything, accepting that energetically I was grateful for her. From that moment on, my mother has been more affectionate and more kind, and our relationship has been more genuinely loving than in the 60 years before that. So that is just one example of so many where I was able to really clear something and then integrate it and move forward. And I feel like plant medicine can be so valuable like that. It requires integration, it requires work. It's not a magic pill that then you just get to go on with a bunch of bad habits and crummy thinking patterns and it works. That's not the case. But if you're willing to do the integration and the work, it is a real gift. And I'm super grateful for it.
What a beautiful story. And we'll get the name of that book and put it into
Yes,
our show notes.
Yes.
Yeah, but I just really want to, just felt that like so deeply in my heart. And so many women in our community just really struggle with the mother wound. And so I just really felt in your share that like really remembering and understanding that it's like we chose each other, right? And we're on this path and our mothers like are part of that journey for us. And what a gift for you to like fully see her purpose in all of this. And she's like helped to usher you into the woman that you are, just for you to get that. So beautiful. Thank you for sharing that story.
Yeah, thank you. It helps me also because I'm a mom. I think it's given me a lot. I'm going through it now. Speaking of vulnerable, I think we spiral around. And so first it was kind of this thing with the homeless teen project where I went, whoa, I'll take a stand for this. And then it was putting out Thrive 1. Okay, I'll take a stand for that. And then Thrive 2. And now stuff that's going on. I feel like there's this sorcerer's spell across the planet right now with people just like, whoa, wait a minute, snap out of it. There's a lot of freedoms that were very hard won that are going fast. And I think it's very important to be cognizant of that and to not go for it. So there's really different worldviews and different sources of information going on. And I'm experiencing in my own family the divide that can happen as a result of that, because there's big stuff. What you believe and how you feel about masks and vaccines and all that kind of stuff. I'm grateful to be experienced enough to know that love is primary, that holding the connection of love is the most important thing, and that our worldview comes second to that, so that we explore it in relation to some grace of connection and don't allow it. Like I just said, I will not succumb to the division that is being, I believe, thrust upon us. Black, white, this gender, that gender, left, right, COVID this, COVID that, like so many ways to divide and distract us from what's happening with trillions of dollars making it into the same hands that made it there in 2008 during the collapse. Bill Gates buying up most of the farmland in the United States. There's a totalitarian takeover happening in my educated opinion. So I feel very outspoken about it. And at the same time, I recognize I want to maintain the connection with people who believe and feel otherwise. And that requires a much more expanded kind of conviction that I don't need to convince people. I do need to find something else. That's sort of the punchline of all the work that Foster and I have done, which is where we landed after all these travels and all this research, decades. I mean, we had such a glorious opportunity to spend our lives looking into stuff. My conclusion is that people will not end up agreeing. on much of anything, really, like key things. The whole world's not going to wake up and come to the same realization. And you hear a lot of people's hope and vision is like, oh, these guys will wake up and get how precious the planet really is or something. I don't think so. What I do believe is that we all can agree to one thing, and that's that we don't want to be violated against our will. It's the non-aggression principle, Martin Luther King, Gandhi. These are people who've exemplified this as a strategy to say, okay, how do we navigate here in a way that we don't violate each other against our will? And it turns out that's a really rigorous and impactful approach to take. I said a lot of this I come to scientifically, like scientifically the core organizing structure of the universe scientifically is the torus, which is distinct and unified at the same time. And I think that's really a valuable kind of way to think about it. I'm distinct as an individual and unified always with every other living being, visible and invisible. And so how to navigate that balance and how to say, you go ahead and do what you believe is appropriate. I'm going to do what I believe is appropriate. And now that's what we get to navigate. How do we not impose one worldview onto another? And so that would mean no mandated anything for anybody in their bodies. There's a lot that impacts freedom coming from that. That's the personal conclusion that I've come to from all of this. It's challenging and vulnerable in terms of this because it comes up all the time now with the COVID reality. And I see families being ripped apart. And I am just like, that is not going to happen in my family. I'm determined.
Yeah. And I think that's the importance of circle and how circle plays a role in our world. And what the thing that I've been in this conversation too, how do we honor the individual and the collective?
Yeah.
And that we get to learn how to really honor both of those things when we come into circle, right? And we can really like allow each person to have their worldview and to believe what they believe. And how do we like still maintain the circle together, right? And so that's my hope, is that the more circles we have, like we actually have this vehicle to bring us together and to really honor both of those things. Yeah. And the Taurus, I love that part of the movie. It's so powerful.
Yeah.
And that solution.
Yeah. That's the challenge. I think about it because people talk about unconditional love all the time. I think, well, what is unconditional love? Like that's a tall order, actually. Unconditional love is a tall order, and yet it's the medium of consciousness. I believe that we are in a unified field of energy. That energy is love. It is unconditional love. It's not connected here and not connected. It's one completely connected web of energy. And so how do we be in resonance with that? What is stillness in all of this? And that's such a personal process that takes practice again and again, and holding the love primary and then navigating from there, especially like I think there's a lot of dangerous stuff going on, right? It's very threatening. And so it requires, okay, it's like a mantra. What am I going to hold primary in this interaction? Come from that, be who you want to be. I think that a lot, just be who I want to remember myself as having been. Even if I don't feel like it in the moment, like practice it, just practice that. But that requires that we tune in and know who is that we want to be. Who is our highest self, and what is unconditional love, and what would that show up as in this conversation?
I'm really present to this fearless inquiry and just so many questions that you're posing. So I just really want to presence that for our audience, is that you have brought forth onto this interview so many powerful questions for us to really be in the inquiry of. Yeah. And whether it's that the piece around like being at the end of your life and being in that inquiry, following the money, this one of like, really, what is unconditional love? Like, what's my primary? And so just thank you for all these beautiful questions that you've brought.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I think about that thought. One of my favorite things about my husband Foster is that he's really fearless in his inquiry. It's interesting to see how rare that is. Like, I remember having to say to my kids, think as if nobody's watching, because we don't even let our thoughts go into certain inquiry that might be somehow considered taboo. I felt that, like, to me, one of the most natural things in the world would be to look up and wonder what other life forms are out there and in what form, right? That, who wouldn't think that? If you didn't have anybody telling you, don't think that, because as soon as you talk about ETs, you're going to be put over here. It's like, if you weren't afraid of the inquiry, it would be a wonderful, fun thing to think about. I used to look up with my dad at the stars in the 50s and talk about, wow, I wonder who's out there. Now it's this totally taboo subject, and that's part of what we unpack. Why is that a taboo subject? And why is following the money and what's happening in secret societies and who's benefiting from this and where is the money going? And checking all of that out and seeing the role of some pretty nefarious and insidious stuff that's harming people. Right now, I've been doing a big inquiry into artificial intelligence and its role in these kind of caste system that's being laid out educationally and economically. The middle class, of course, is being wiped out here in the US and around the world, really. What role does AI have to do with the new economy that's emerging with what's called the fourth industrial revolution? I joined the university, Singularity University from Google, to find out, what are they doing? Like, Google's clearly a big, huge power. What are the companies that they're most interested in investing in now? What are they developing? Read all their books to hear from themselves. And to me, that's the kind of fearless inquiry that I'm so grateful now that I don't care whether it's a politically correct thing to look into or not. I want to know what's happening and what do different people have to say about it, and listen to people who have all different perspectives and find out, well, what do I think? And then change my mind. And that's what being alive is all about. I think we can free each other. And I think what you're doing with the circles can really help us free each other by showing that we can be with each other while we disagree and honor that we're each really looking into it and doing our best. And I'll say, in the COVID situation, for me, what I've asked is that if there's going to be consequences in our relationship, that we at least avail ourselves of each other's sources of information so that we can understand, why would you think that the vaccine is safe? Why would you think that it has anything to do with contagion when it says on the fine print that it's just to help mitigate minor symptoms of one version that's already morphed into 30. So you show me what you are looking at, I'll show you what I'm looking at, and then we could just have a conversation about it. That's what's needed. And I think if that's going to happen, it's going to be women doing that, because we know how important maintaining our connection really is.
So you mentioned before we started this concept of democratizing empowerment.
Uh-huh.
Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, I actually had that thought in response to your circles, because I don't find it to be super useful to have there be this divide between thought leaders and enlightened leaders and the rest of us. I don't want to be called that. I don't want to I don't think that's appropriate or empowering. Of course, some of us are more comfortable with leadership than others, but it's all a matter of purpose. And what are we here to do? And if my purpose happens to be to help, my purpose is to help up-level people's sense of what's possible so that they stop settling for less. And so that's taken me to do things with the media or whatever to help get the image and the possibility out there. But somebody else has, for whatever their purpose is, may not be so high profile or articulate or whatever. And what they're doing is essential. and is in fulfillment of their purpose. And that is very valuable. I don't think all actions are equal. I think there are things we can do in the face of what's happening that are more leveraged than others, and that it's important to know that. There's a way that money and education and media are being used that we need to tend to. But I do believe that alignment with purpose and staying in fulfillment of that is equal. That's something that we can give each other by being more transparent about the process, so that we know. That's the thing about that 2%. Like, I have a friend from Code Pink, like super radical, sneaks into like all boys network, stands up with posters, says, here's what your company's doing. Like, oh my God, super like out there stuff. She's just as afraid as anybody. Of course, her heart's beating fast. She doesn't know for sure that morning if she's up for it, or that night, whatever. But she's made the choice that in alignment with her purpose, to put it out there and say, I'm standing for this. I'm going to stand for this. You can't get away with it. We notice what you're doing. And I think that it's just really important to find whatever that is for you, if it's standing up in a wildly public arena or just being true with how you spend your time, aligning your values and your behavior, whatever that is. That to me is democratizing empowerment and letting us know that we're all equally empowered to live our purpose and to keep our word. Doesn't take any money to keep your word. It just takes self-knowing and then aligning your values with your behavior.
Yeah. And I'm just imagining if more people on this planet were really connected with that purpose.
Yes.
And really tuned into what lights them up, what they're passionate about, what they're triggered about, right? And taking that stand. So powerful. Yeah. One of the things that's come for me, and that we've had some guests around the unschooling movement.
Yeah.
And you talk about this in the movie around our education system is really draining our children from thinking for themselves, from having fearless inquiry, right? And so just this unschooling notion of really putting resources and guidance and mentorship behind what kids are passionate about and creating space for them to ask the questions, right? That we allow that. Then we have these amazing human beings who are they're learning from such a young age to really be on purpose versus like what they should be doing and what they should know.
Right. And there's a woman, and we can link to her, Alison McDowell, who's done a fabulous series. She has a thing called Wrench in the Gears, but she also has a series of 4 videos on the 4th revolution, which is it's the new economy. Like, we've been in an oil economy, we're moving to a biocapital economy, which is based on data from all of us, and it's hooked into a health system and into an economy, which is a complex thing that would involve another conversation. But the gist of it is that she really unpacks the relationship between artificial intelligence, surveillance, education, and the economy. And I highly recommend it, because anybody interested in cultivating free minds and free people in our future through our children, I really think would benefit from being aware of her work. So I hope we can link to that.
Absolutely. That sounds great. So as we're coming up on the hour here, is there anything that we've missed, or anything that you're like, I want to make sure this is mentioned?
I think it's just what I would like is for women to be able to tune in and really not sanction themselves against whatever the gift is that they discover inside, that we really need it all. There is a place for everybody, whatever your purpose, we need you. And we're at thriveon.com, and we have Thrive 1 and Thrive 2, and we're also about to launch something called the Solutions Hub, where people working on solutions have an opportunity to list themselves by sector and region and issue, and we can all find each other to be better organized in sharing the resources and insights and tools that we need to navigate these new times. We need everybody to be just who you are. I appreciate that, and I appreciate what you're doing to help us see and know each other better.
Beautiful. Yeah, like we're each a unique individual snowflake like no other on
Yeah.
this planet, and we all need to really recognize the divinity in our unique paths. I love that. And I
Yeah.
love this solutions hub. Sounds amazing. So
Yeah.
thank you.
Yes, you're welcome.
Thank you for all that you're doing and the stand that you are. Thank you for bringing that conversation here to inspire all the women who are listening, who are really wanting to be on purpose. All the women here are spiritual and want to make a difference. And so I really appreciate your inspiration that you bring
Well,
today.
thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. If you just listened to this show, I'd love for you to leave the Brave Woman podcast an honest review. Reviews help podcasts like this one grow, making it more possible for me to devote my time, energy, and money to its production. If you take a screenshot of your review and email it to support@sistershipcircle.com, we'll send you one of our archetype activations as a thank you gift. If you like this show and have been watching for a while, or even this is the first one, I have an ask of you. This feels vulnerable, but I know I need to model the brave woman every day in as many ways as I can. Here's my ask. This podcast costs a lot of time, money, and energy to produce it. And in order for it to be sustainable over the long term, I need financial sponsorship. A simple way for you to support is by buying me a cup of coffee. Cute, huh? If everyone who listened bought me a cup of coffee for $1, $3, $5, it would cover the cost of production. So you can do this at sistershipcircle.com/coffee. Thank you so much for your love and support. Up next, if you want to bring more potency to your leadership, then you are going to love the fire starter and truth teller, Ruby Freeman, who in the next episode gets real about life, business, and love.